welcome back to the Hernandez story. This is our part 2 of our NICU journey. I know it's been a while, things have been going crazy, so we finally had time to make our part 2 of it. So what we want to talk about on this part 2 is a little bit of, part 1 was about how everything happened and how we got there, and we gave a little bit of background information, all of that. So this is going to be about the first couple of months that they are in the NICU. So they were born at 25 weeks. If you want to recap, you could go back and watch part 1 on there.
Yep.
We'll include the link in there to watch part 1 and the info below. They were, because they were 25 weekers, they were considered micro preemies. So there's a whole bunch of different categories, and they were considered micro preemies. And then everyone's stay in the NICU is different. When we went in, there were people who've been there a while, people who have been there for a couple of months,
a couple weeks.
There's people who are there for just a couple of days,
a couple of hours even. It just really depends on how your baby is born and what kind of things they need. There were some that would come in just for blood, jaundice and stuff.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be preemies that go to the NICU. There could be full terms or like 37 weekers, 36 weekers who just need something, like she said, for jaundice or other things that need to be in a isolated place that need to be taken care of for medical reasons. But a majority of them, I guess, are preemies, in which our boys were at. And yeah, everyone's stay is different. Ours was 100 and something days. Some people's, like she said, were just a couple of hours or a couple of days.
Yeah, and then there was people that were there before us that had been there for a year. So definitely different.
It all just depends on the severity of the cases and
how easy and fast they can get better, pretty much.
Yeah. This was November 2018 when the boys were born. And the procedures were no one was allowed in except for parents, and if you were a guest, you had to come in with a parent or be on the list of 4 people that were allowed to come in without the parent. And you had to scrub down and wash your hands really good, soaps and waters, and it's extremely hot water, so your hands, literally anything that was on your hands was destroyed as far as bacteria and germs. You had to put on gloves if you wanted to touch the boys at the early stages when we got there at first.
And you had to put your phone in a cover. You had to clean off your phone with a wipe, a disinfectant wipe, and then put it in a plastic. Then put tape over the plastic so you would not be able to take your phone out. So it was very crazy.
Yeah. Some hospitals limit the hours that parents can stay. Ours, we could have literally stayed there all night, and some nights we even did spend the night there with the babies. And it's hard because you don't want to leave your kids alone, and it was hard.
Yeah, we would sleep on the couches. Thankfully, we had amazing nurses at our hospital that would give us pillows and give us blankets and would check on us throughout the night and make sure we were okay. And we're just so great about it. It was very touching for sure. So I had a book. One of the nurses recommended for me to get a journal because I was getting a little bit overwhelmed with everything, and I got PTSD and postpartum depression from all this, and so I would write down everything that would happen to the kids, and I would write down what we did that day as a family. I would write down whenever they had I would write down every time they had a moment where they would stop breathing, just help me cope. I write down how much weight they were gaining within the time. I wrote down everything. Both had a bunch of eye exams. They had ROP. Went through PIC lines. We went through
all the different
ventilators and
CPAPs, high
yeah.
flows.
So when we first got in there, Leo and Manu were both on ventilators. And a week after, Leo ended up getting off the ventilator and ended up getting in a CPAP machine. And so I wrote down everything: their first blood transfusion, when they got switched from oxygen machines, when they went down in oxygen level, the medications they were taking, the amount of food they were taking. So
The doctor's updates.
the doctor updates, who was on duty, pretty much, and we kept track of everything. So like I kept track of everything because that helped me kind of cope with everything. It was hard because we didn't get to hold the kids right away. It took us a few days and a few weeks to even be able to put our hand on them, or even be able to like hold them and carry them and stuff. And especially Manu was the longest one that we had to wait for to hold. And I think what made it difficult was the fact that I kept seeing, I was able to hold Leo, and I was like, God, like, why can't I hold Manu? Like, why can't I just hold him? Like, I want to carry him. I want to play with him. I want to hug him. I want to be able to have that motherly moment with him. And it was just so hard to get him to be able to stay within his parameters, to be able to be held. And once we did, it was so overwhelming. I was able to hold him first. I got the privilege of holding him first. John got the privilege of holding Leo first, and it was such a blessing. Like, when I tell you, that was the best feeling I've ever had in my life. Like,
That and it sounds weird, but hearing them cry, because like she said earlier, they're both on ventilators to start with, so the machine is breathing for you and you can't strongly breathe for yourself. So the ventilator is a tube that's literally down your esophagus, going into your lungs and pumping air and taking out air to make you breathe. So you can't talk, you can't make noises when you have a ventilator. And apart from being able to hold the boys, the other thing was not being able to hear them cry. And then when Leo switched to CPAP, we got to hear him cry and we heard his little voice. And then it took Manu, again, a lot longer because his lungs were very underdeveloped. And he's still not the strongest breather, and he has his moments now.
even at 19 months.
But he was on ventilator for a really long time, and we couldn't hold him while he was on ventilator. He had to be on at least a CPAP. So once he did get off the ventilator, it did take him a couple days before we actually heard him cry. There was times where you can tell he was in distress and his mouth was open and his eyebrows were scrunched, but he couldn't make a sound. Nothing was coming out vocally. And then the first time we did hear him cry, it was really awesome because we finally got to hear his voice.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. It is beautiful. It was just beautiful. We spent pretty much every major holiday that year in the NICU. We spent...
this was November 7th they were born, so
we spent the November holidays there, which were Thanksgiving. We spent Christmas Eve there. We spent New Year's Day there. We spent...
And that was the whole year, 2018 going into 2019. And the cool thing about it was, we chose to be there during those holidays. It really was no big party family celebrations. It was us being with our new family, even if it was the boys being in the incubators and we were outside of their incubators with them.
So for Christmas Eve, we spent Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with the boys there at the hospital. And Christmas Eve, we had both of our parents there. They took turns coming in and out, and we opened gifts with the kids. The boys didn't. The boys weren't able to get anything inside their room. So we sanitized everything before we wrapped it in the hospital, and then we
June bugs.
We wrapped everything there at the hospital. We cleaned it prior to taking it to the hospital, and then we opened them. We unwrapped the gifts there at the hospital, and that was so magical. The boys were so calm that day. They did so well that we were able to hold them. We cuddled for a good 2.5 hours with each one of them, and then we opened gifts while they were in their incubators. And it was so much fun.
Had a little tree.
They had a little Christmas tree in a little bag because they had to be covered because of all the germs, and so they had a Christmas tree in their room, and then we had a Christmas tree outside the NICU that had their names on them that actually our primary nurse made. Shout out to Julie. And they got to keep these with their names on them, which was really cool. It was awesome. They did so much for us, and I don't know what I would have done without any of that, for sure. We were there every single day. We did not miss a day. We were there for hours.
Even whenever I went back to work, right after work, I would just head straight over to the NICU.
And then when I went back to work, I would go during my lunch break. Then I would go back to work, and then right after work, I would go back to the hospital, and then he would meet me there once he would get off of work. And so that was hard. that was the hardest because whenever we would try to get updates and talk to a doctor, doctors usually do their rounds in the morning, and when we were both at work, and so it was tough. We were so lucky to have primary nurses that were able to, anytime we would call, we would tell them, hey, can you ask this question? And they were so good about asking the questions for us, and then calling us back and letting us know, hey, this is what the doctor said, or hey, this is what we're gonna do next. And it was great.
We hope again that these videos help either people understand what NICU life is, or if you're in it right now and you're watching this, something you can relate to or get support from, or reach out to us. If you have any questions about things, we'd love to answer those, so please put those in the comment section.
Yep, please.
For sure.
Because we sometimes don't know what to talk about. Like, seriously, like, we're just talking about their first NICU time, and then we're gonna keep going and talking about Emma too. You know, we forget to mention Emma, that we have another daughter. You know, but she's there, I promise. She's loud and proud for sure. She's a crazy one. But thank y'all so much for watching our videos, and
be on the lookout for part 3,
because we're not done. Well. Okay. You better take that out. So, from our family to yours.
Stay safe.
And be blessed. Bye.
Bye.